Thank you very much for joining us today. It's Monday morning. Last week, we held our third cafe on the new European Bauhaus. It was a series of events. The first one looked at what the new European Bauhaus was and how you can get involved. The second was what role the Cultural Heritage Institution is in the new European Bauhaus. And the third was asking people to consider how does the cultural heritage sector promote collaboration and innovation to support the goals of the new European Bauhaus. Like the previous two cafes, we had a really international audience, people coming from far and wide. And we had lots of people asking questions about how to get involved, how to make connections, and what the role of the sector was. And we also had some really interesting examples of collaboration, of innovation, of skill sharing shared. And Blondine and Nathan, you're joining us today to look back on that event and maybe share a little bit about your contributions. So can I ask you just to share your thoughts on how was it for you and what were your takeaways from the event? Nathan, can I start with you?
Sure, Julia, thanks very much. Yeah, it was a pleasure to attend last week. I think it was a really interesting event and it was great to see so many people from all over the world taking part. For me, I found it quite rewarding and quite stimulating. I think what I really kind of took away from it, one of the things that stood with me the most was the project that Blondine made a reference to as well around the forthcoming exhibition at the House of European History, and the idea of waste kind of as a central piece to that exhibition and studying how people interact with objects that are kind of discarded or thrown away. And the idea of kind of building a sustainable exhibition and kind of working toward kind of carbon neutrality in that process as a kind of way of reflecting on our relationship with things from a museum perspective. I think that's fascinating. I suppose one of the things that struck me as well was trying to find a way to kind of bring the idea of sustainability and community together. That's so central to the kind of focus for the new Bauhaus. And I talked a little bit about a project that we have ongoing here, which is the creation of a rooftop garden on top of the CHQ building where the museum is housed. So that's a kind of 200-year-old bonded warehouse in the city centre in the Docklands. It's a collaboration between a number of kind of tech companies here and the local communities as well as ourselves to see how we can deal with kind of grey waste, so grey areas and kind of flooding and runoff in the city. All the data from this kind of pilot scheme is going to be open source and available to help kind of create a predictive model for how we can deal with flooding in the River Dodder and the River Liffey in years to come. And it's also being done with the community. So lots of local people are involved in kind of spotting kind of problem areas that might flood. And the idea being that if it's a success here, other residential houses and buildings might implement something similar and it could really reduce that kind of impact around the city. So it's a good way of kind of connecting policy with kind of the science on the ground and kind of big open lab in effect. So I think it's a good example of how you can have a collaborative process that's building toward a sustainable goal that links culture, local communities and external partners and become quite interdisciplinary. So yeah, I'm pretty pleased with that. And hopefully now, the other thing that I took away is that not enough cultural institutions are represented in the initiation bodies and groups in cities all over Europe that make these decisions. And that there was a stark, I think it was Jan that made a stark comment that they had 0 submissions to date, and that they need to get on board. Sometimes we can be a little bit siloed and we do a lot of great work, but we don't link with the right people or bodies or tell people what's going on. We need to do more to work together. So those are my first takeaways.
Yeah, thank you. And Blondine, perhaps you'd like to follow there.
Sure. Yeah, I think for me it was a little bit what Nathan you referred to right now. It was really helpful to follow this, to take part and follow this discussion to really realize that there is a need for cultural organizations to mobilize really around the topic of sustainability and the relation of sustainability, of culture with sustainability. That probably, like we were made aware during the discussion, the cultural organizations are not necessarily at the front and not necessarily the most visible, but I think there is really a need and a relevance to actually connect with cities, with community organizations, and that cultural, and it's a little bit for me what was inspiring in the project of your museum, Nathan, that cultural organizations really have a role to play, and maybe even more in connecting with other bodies, other actors, stakeholders at local level or national or European level. So that was very interesting for me to hear and realize. Also this idea of the different levels, the community work at local level, but then also what do we do to bridge the gap or to connect with the European level. And there I really see, and for me, the very idea of organizing those cafes really showed me as well the role of organizations like Europeana. There are others, of course. I saw, for instance, Europa Nostra also doing a lot about the new European Bauhaus in the field of cultural heritage. I think there is really a crucial role to because it's very ambitious, I think, to try to do co-creation, co-design at this European level, to try to bring all those initiatives together and to make them somehow enter into a dialogue and make sense and count on this European level. So I think it's great that the institutions are trying to do that, but I think definitely organizations like Europeana and others have a really facilitating and mediating role here, which is really important. And I think just one more thing that was good for me to interesting for me was that we were both Nathan and me, two voices from the museums. That was interesting that we had both examples because again, I think there is really a crucial role here for museums to play. Producing exhibitions, bringing local communities around this topic of sustainability, in the case of our project on the history of waste, reuse, recycling, repurposing all sorts of materials. It's a very fruitful ground for action, and I was glad to be able to hear actually an example from another museum in a very different context, at a very different level. But I think that's very enriching also to bring those experiences together. So for that, thank you to Europeana and those nice cafe initiatives. I just wish I had been able to join for the earlier editions, but I'm sure there will be other occasions to talk and to be part of those conversations again.
Yeah, I hope so. But also thank you to both of you for participating and also sharing your experiences on reflection. I think that we've heard from other participants in other cafes as well, how much the new European Bauhaus really connects the Green Deal, sustainability with cultural heritage. It's like, I think, what the sector's been waiting for a long time. And I think it's going to be really interesting to see how this develops. But I think the point you made, Nathan, is really important, that institutions step forward and try to find ways to join those conversations and to look around in maybe their local environment. But also you can do that by going to the European Union's Bauhaus website and submitting your examples. I think the deadline for doing that is the end of June. And from Europeana's side, we're trying to raise awareness of some of the ways that institutions can get involved and spread that kind of information through our communities and our networks. And I think it really does rely on the institutions also then sharing back within those same networks and communities. So I'd encourage you, and also anyone else who is listening to this or has been participating, to go onto the new European Bauhaus website and share your examples, and then maybe think about sharing that also through your own networks to encourage other people to do that as well. Because we've also heard a lot of discussion in previous cafes and actually last week about the role of teachers, the role of craft making, of building new skills and sharing skills, and the role of the cultural heritage sector in contributing towards all of that. So we know there's so much there. It's a matter of trying to keep encouraging people to share and to participate. Okay, so I don't know what's coming next. We haven't really decided. I think I get a sense that actually people want to keep talking about the new European Bauhaus and how the cultural heritage sector can get involved. So we're going to think about how to keep this conversation going. And in the meantime, I just again keep encouraging you to share your examples with each other. All right, thank you very much.